Sofia Martinez stared at the photograph on her desk, her fingers tracing the outline of her sister's smile. Elena's eyes, bright with promise, gazed back at her. A frozen moment from 1998, just 3 weeks before she became the 7th victim of the man the press had dubbed the Silencer. 27 years had passed, but for Sofia the wound remained fresh, a constant ache beneath her professional veneer. Outside her apartment window, Boston's skyline glittered against the October dusk. The city had changed dramatically since the late 90s, when a series of brutal murders had terrorized its streets, only to be gradually forgotten as the new millennium brought fresh horrors and distractions. Sofia's laptop screen glowed with half-finished research for a puff piece on urban renewal, a far cry from the investigative journalism she'd once pursued with passion. Her phone vibrated. The editor's name flashed on the screen. Sofia let it ring through to voicemail. Whatever Dave wanted could wait. Tonight belonged to Elena, as did every anniversary of her death. "I'm still trying," she whispered to the photograph, pouring herself another glass of bourbon. The amber liquid caught the light as she raised it in a silent toast. The call from Melissa, her only remaining connection to Elena's case, had come that morning. "They're purging the cold case files," her friend in the records department had warned. "Budget cuts. Anything over 20 years without new evidence is being digitized and archived. After that, it'll take an act of God to get them reopened." Sofia's apartment was a testament to her obsession. Boxes of newspaper clippings, interview transcripts, and crime scene photos she'd collected over the years. Official channels had long since stopped taking her calls. The lead detective, James Almeida, had retired in disgrace after the 8th victim and no arrest. The case had gone cold, buried beneath newer tragedies. She pulled out Elena's diary from her desk drawer, the one piece of evidence the police had returned to the family. Most entries were mundane, but Sofia had always felt there was something more, some clue hidden in her sister's elegant handwriting. Elena had been secretive in those final months, working late at her paralegal job at Crawford and Bennett, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. Sofia's phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Dave, but a number she didn't recognize. Curiosity overrode her desire for solitude. "Sofia Martinez," she answered, professional by habit. "Ms. Martinez." The voice was male, gravelly with age and cigarettes. "This is Detective James Almeida. Former detective, I should say." Sofia's grip tightened on the phone. She'd spent years trying to reach this man, who had eventually disappeared into obscurity, reportedly drinking himself into isolation somewhere in New Hampshire. "How did you get my number?" she demanded, heart racing. "That doesn't matter. What matters is I found something. Something about your sister's case." Sofia's journalist instincts flared to life. "Why now, after all these years?" "Because I'm dying, Miss Martinez. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "And I don't want to take what I know to the grave." The world seemed to tilt beneath Sofia's feet. "What do you know?" "Not over the phone. Meet me tomorrow. Bridgewater Diner. Off Route 24. Noon." He paused. "Bring your sister's diary." "How do you know about—" "I know a lot of things, Ms. Martinez. Things that got buried. Things that people with influence wanted forgotten." Another cough. "Noon tomorrow. Come alone." The line went dead, leaving Sofia staring at her reflection in the darkened window. Her heart pounded against her ribs. After years of dead ends, was this finally a lead, or just the ramblings of a broken man seeking absolution before death? She turned to her investigation wall, where photos of all 8 victims were arranged chronologically. 8 young women, all connected to prestigious law firms or corporate offices in downtown Boston. Elena had been different from the others in one key way. She'd been Latina, the only non-white victim. The press had barely noticed this detail, but Sofia had always wondered if it was significant. Sleep eluded her that night. She pored over Elena's diary again, paying special attention to the coded entries her sister had started making 3 months before her death. Elena had always loved puzzles and ciphers since childhood. The coded sections appeared to be random numbers and letters, but Sophia knew her sister would never use something undecipherable. Morning found her exhausted, but resolute. She packed Elena's diary, her research notes, and her recorder. The drive to Bridgewater took just over an hour, the autumn landscape a blur of crimson and gold. The diner was exactly what she expected, a faded relic of better days, with vinyl booths and the scent of burnt coffee hanging in the air. Almeida wasn't hard to spot. Gaunt and grey, he occupied a corner booth, eyes constantly scanning the entrance. He'd aged 20 years in the past 10, his once imposing frame now hunched and frail. When he saw Sophia, recognition flickered in his bloodshot eyes. "You look like her," he said as she slid into the booth. "Same eyes." Sophia placed a recorder on the table. "Mind if I record this?" He shrugged. "Suit yourself. Not like my reputation can get any worse." The waitress brought coffee without being asked. Almeida's hands trembled slightly as he added 3 sugars. "You said you found something," Sophia prompted. Almeida nodded, reaching into his worn jacket. "2 weeks ago I got this in the mail." He slid a yellowed envelope across the table. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, a group of men in tuxedos at what appeared to be a charity gala. On the back, written in red ink, they all knew, Crawford Charity Ball, 1998. Sophia's breath caught. Crawford, the same law firm where Elena had worked. 3 of these men were partners at firms where victims worked, Almeida said quietly. "And this one," he tapped a smiling man in the center, "is Senator Richard Dawson. Back then he was just a rising star in the DA's office." "What does this prove?" Sophia asked, studying the photograph. "Nothing by itself. But it's what made me go back to my own records, the ones I kept after they shut down the investigation." His eyes met hers. "Your sister was keeping track of something, wasn't she? In that diary of hers." Sophia hesitated, then nodded, placing Eleanor's diary on the table. "I need your help decoding it," she admitted. "She used some kind of cipher." For the first time, a ghost of a smile crossed Almeida's face. "That's why they never found him, you know, because he was never meant to be found." The motel room walls were thin enough that Sophia could hear the muffled argument from the neighboring unit. She'd checked in under a false name, paying cash, old habits from her investigative reporting days. Spread across the bed were photocopies of Elena's diary, the mysterious photograph, and Almeida's personal case notes, smuggled out when he'd been forced into retirement. "You're saying the investigation was deliberately sabotaged?" Sophia had pressed him at the diner, struggling to keep her voice level. Almeida's bloodshot eyes had held hers steadily. "I'm saying evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed statements overnight. My lieutenant suddenly assigned me to other cases." He'd taken a long sip of coffee. "And when I pushed, I found myself drinking alone, with a ruined career." Now, alone in the dim light of the motel lamp, Sophia studied the coded entries in Elena's diary. Her sister had used some form of substitution cipher, but traditional methods weren't yielding results. Whatever Elena had discovered, she'd gone to extraordinary lengths to hide it. Sophia's phone vibrated with a text from her editor. "Where's that urban renewal piece?" Deadline was noon. She ignored it, focusing instead on the photograph. The charity gala had taken place just 2 weeks before Elena's murder. Had her sister been there? Had she seen something? Or someone? A knock at the door startled her. Hand instinctively reaching for her pepper spray, Sophia approached cautiously. "Who is it?" she called. "It's me," Almeida's gravelly voice replied. She opened the door to find him looking even more haggard than earlier, the New England autumn chill having painted his hollow cheeks a sickly red. "I should have mentioned I was staying here too," he said, stepping inside when she moved aside. "Cheaper than driving back tonight." He surveyed the materials spread across the bed. "Any progress?" Sophia shook her head. Elena was too clever for standard decryption methods. "There's something I'm missing, something personal, that would have been the key." Almeida picked up one of the diary pages, squinting at Elena's neat handwriting. "What about dates? Birthdays, anniversaries, something only she would know." Sophia considered this, thinking back to their childhood in the predominantly Latino neighborhood of East Boston. Their parents had emigrated from Mexico in the 1970s, determined to give their daughters opportunities they never had. Elena, 7 years older, had been Sophia's protector, confidant, and idol. "We had this game," Sophia said slowly, memories surfacing. "A secret language. We used our parents' birthdays as shifting keys." She grabbed a notepad and began working through the cipher with renewed purpose. An hour later, she sat back, eyes wide. "Oh my God, you cracked it?" Almeida leaned forward. "Listen to this entry from September 3rd, 1998. Found something in the Westland Corp merger files. CM instructing partners to destroy documents. RD involved somehow. Need more proof before going to authorities." Sophia looked up. CM could be Charles Manning, the managing partner at Crawford and Bennett, and RD, Richard Dawson, Almeida finished, his expression grim. "The current senator who was assistant DA back then." Sophia continued reading. September 15th. Meeting Jay tonight. He says he has copies of the missing documents. Scared, but have to know the truth. She turned the page. September 17th. It's worse than I thought. Not just fraud, actual blood money. They're all complicit, making copies of everything tonight. The last decoded entry, dated just 2 days before Elena's murder, was chillingly brief. "They know." Silence filled the room as the implications sank in. "She wasn't randomly targeted," Sophia whispered. "She was silenced." Almeida nodded, his face a mask of resigned confirmation. "All the victims worked at firms handling sensitive accounts. All had access to files most paralegals wouldn't see. But who is Jay? And where are these copies she made?" The former detective rubbed his stubbled chin. "Jay could be Jeremy Wells. He was a junior partner who committed suicide a week after your sister's murder. I always thought the timing was suspicious, but I couldn't find a connection." Sophia's journalistic mind was now fully engaged, piecing together the puzzle. "We need to find those copied documents. Elena would have hidden them somewhere safe. After all this time, they could be anywhere, or destroyed." "No," Sophia said firmly. "My sister was methodical. If she made copies of something important, she would have ensured they survived." A thought struck her. "Our parents' house. They never moved, never changed anything in her room." Almeida checked his watch. "It's late. First thing tomorrow, we'll go there." As he rose to leave, Sophia asked the question that had been burning since his call. "Why now, Almeida? Why reach out after all these years?" He paused at the door, shoulders slumped with the weight of his failures. "Because I made a promise to 8 families that I never kept. And because the man who sent me that photograph was found dead in his apartment 3 days later. Apparent suicide." His eyes, when they met hers, held a warning. "We're stirring up old ghosts, Miss Martinez. Powerful ones." After he left, Sophia couldn't sleep. She searched online for information about Jeremy Wells, finding only a brief obituary and a few mentions in legal publications. His death had barely made a ripple in the news cycle, one more tragedy lost in the shuffle of a violent decade. She turned to Richard Dawson next. His rise had been meteoric, from assistant DA to district attorney, then state senator, with whispers of a gubernatorial run. His campaign website showed a family man with an impeccable record of public service. But in every smiling photograph, Sophia now saw the face from the charity gala, standing among men connected to murdered women. Her phone rang just after midnight. Melissa from Records. "Sophia, you need to be careful," her friend said without preamble. "Someone accessed the silencer files today, someone with federal credentials." "FBI?" Sophia asked, instantly alert. "No, Treasury Department of all things. And they took everything, physical evidence, DNA samples, everything." A chill ran down Sophia's spine. "Melissa, I need you to look up one more thing. Jeremy Wells' suicide, October 1998. The sound of typing came through the line. "That's weird. It's been flagged. I can't access it without special clearance." After hanging up, Sophia stood at the window, watching the occasional car pass on the highway. Elena had stumbled onto something big enough to get her killed. something that powerful people still wanted buried after nearly 3 decades. The next morning, she found Almeida's motel room door ajar. Inside, the room had been ransacked. Of the former detective, there was no sign, only a smear of blood on the bathroom door and his cell phone smashed on the floor. Sophia's hands trembled as she navigated the narrow streets of East Boston. The old neighborhood had changed, gentrification claiming block after block, but her parents' modest 3-story walk-up remained, a stubborn holdout from another era. She parked a block away, scanning for unfamiliar vehicles or watching eyes before approaching. Her mother answered the door, her face lighting up with surprise. "Sofia, que alegría verte." The embrace was warm, familiar, a momentary respite from the mounting dread that had followed her since discovering Almeida's empty room. "Mama?" Sofia managed, returning the hug. "Is Dad home?" "At his chess game in the park. Come, I'll make coffee." Sofia followed her mother to the kitchen, the house exactly as it had always been. Family photos covering the walls, the scent of cinnamon and coffee perpetually in the air. Elena's high school graduation portrait held the place of honor in the living room, eternally 21. "I need to look through Elena's things," Sofia said, accepting the steaming mug, "for a story I'm working on." Her mother's smile faltered slightly. "Siempre trabajando," always working. She sighed. "You know where everything is. Nothing has changed." Elena's bedroom remained a preserved shrine, posters of 90s bands on the walls, law books still stacked neatly on the desk, clothing hanging in the closet as if waiting for her return. Sofia stood in the doorway, momentarily overwhelmed by memories and the enormity of her task. Where would Elena have hidden documents she knew were dangerous? She methodically searched the obvious places first, underneath the mattress, behind the dresser, inside hollowed-out books. Nothing. The closet yielded only dust and old clothes. The desk drawers contained school supplies and teenage mementos. Sofia sat on the bed, frustration mounting. If she were Elena, where would she hide something precious, something she needed to survive even if she didn't? Her eyes fell on the collection of framed photographs on the wall. Elena with friends, with their parents, with Sofia. One photo in particular caught her attention. Elena at 15, holding a chess trophy. Their father had taught them both to play, but Elena had been the prodigy, competing in tournaments throughout high school. Chess, strategy, thinking several moves ahead. Sofia approached the photo, carefully removing it from the wall. Behind the backing, she found nothing, but the memory had triggered something else. The heavy wooden chess set their father had carved, a gift for Eleanor's 16th birthday. She found the set on the top shelf of the closet, bringing it down carefully. The ornate wooden box was dusty, but intact. When she opened it, the pieces nestled in their velvet compartments appeared undisturbed. Sofia ran her fingers along the edges of the box, feeling for inconsistencies. There, a slight gap in the wood along the bottom. She pressed gently, and a hidden compartment slid open. Inside lay a slim USB drive wrapped in a handwritten note. "For Sofia, if anything happens, I love you, E." Her heart pounding, Sofia pocketed the drive and replaced the chess set exactly as she'd found it. As she turned to leave, her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Wells' wife, still alive. Assisted living, Meadowbrook Care Center, go now. It had to be from Almeida. Relief flooded her. He was alive. But for how long? Sofia made her excuses to her mother, promising to return for a proper visit soon. As she left the house, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street, its engine running. She walked in the opposite direction, taking a circuitous route back to her car, constantly checking for followers. Meadowbrook Care Center was a 40-minute drive north of the city. The receptionist barely glanced up when Sofia claimed to be Jeremy Wells's niece, directing her to room 217 with practiced indifference. Margaret Wells sat by the window, her white hair neatly styled, her vacant gaze fixed on the garden outside. At 83, she looked fragile, but the intelligence in her eyes when she turned to Sofia suggested her mind remained sharp. "You're not my niece," she said flatly. "I don't have a niece." Sophia approached slowly. "My name is Sofia Martinez. I'm investigating something your husband might have been involved in." Margaret's expression didn't change. "Jeremy has been dead for 27 years. "I know. I'm sorry." Sophia sat in the chair opposite her. "My sister was Elena Martinez. She was murdered around the same time your husband died." A flicker of recognition crossed the older woman's face. "The paralegal." She nodded slowly. "Jeremy was troubled in those final weeks. He wouldn't tell me why." "Mrs. Wells, do you believe your husband committed suicide?" The question hung in the air between them. Margaret Wells turned back to the window, silent for so long that Sophia thought she might not answer. "My husband," she finally said, "was left-handed." She looked pointedly at Sophia. The gun was found in his right hand. Sophia's breath caught. "Did you tell the police?" A bitter smile touched the older woman's lips. The detective, an older man with sad eyes, he listened. "But the others, they didn't care. Case closed within 48 hours. Did Jeremy leave anything behind? Notes, files, anything unusual?" Margaret rose shakily, crossing to a small desk in the corner. From the drawer, she extracted a key. "Our beach house in Gloucester. After Jeremy died, I couldn't bear to sell it. There's a safe behind the painting in his study. This is the key to the house." She pressed it into Sophia's palm. "I've never found the combination to the safe." "Thank you," Sophia whispered. "Did Jeremy ever mention names? Richard Dawson, Charles Manning?" The older woman's hand trembled slightly. "He mentioned a name once, in his sleep. He was having nightmares those last weeks." She leaned closer. "The Westland account. He kept saying they were cleaning the Westland account." Outside the care center, Sophia checked her phone. Still no direct contact from Almeida, but a new text from the unknown number. "Being followed. Meet at the agreed location." 7 p.m. There was no agreed location. It was a warning. As she approached her car, she noticed a man in a suit leaning against the adjacent vehicle, apparently absorbed in his phone. He glanced up as she passed, their eyes meeting briefly. Sophia kept walking past her car toward the main road. The man followed. She ducked into a coffee shop, went straight through to the back exit, and emerged in an alley. Running now, she circled the block, eventually finding a taxi that took her to a car rental agency. By nightfall, she was driving a nondescript sedan toward Gloucester, the USB drive burning a hole in her pocket and Eleanor's voice echoing in her mind. "Always have an exit strategy, Sophie. Always." The beach house stood alone on a rocky outcrop, dark against the twilight sky. Sophia approached cautiously, using the key Margaret had given her. Inside, the air was stale, furniture draped with sheets like ghosts in the gloom. She found the study easily, a masculine space of leather and dark wood. The painting Margaret had mentioned hung behind the desk, a seascape in muted blues and greys. Behind it, as promised, was a wall safe. Sophia stared at the combination lock, mind racing. What would Jeremy Wells have used? Birth dates were too obvious. Then she remembered the Westland account. On a hunch, she tried the date from Elena's diary, 09/15/98, the day Elena had met with Jeremy. The safe clicked open. Inside was a single manila envelope, yellowed with age. Sophia's hands shook as she opened it, revealing a stack of documents, financial records, transaction histories, photographs. At the top was a handwritten note. "Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm already dead. Make it count. J." As Sophia began to read, the true horror of what Elena had uncovered became clear. Westland Corporation had been a front for laundering money from international arms deals and drug cartels. The law firms, including Crawford and Bennett, had facilitated these transactions, creating a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. And Richard Dawson, as assistant DA, had deliberately redirected investigations away from the operation. The women who died, including Elena, had all stumbled onto pieces of this operation. They weren't victims of a serial killer. They were casualties of a cover-up. A floorboard creaked behind her. Sophia whirled, reaching for her pepper spray. "It's just me," Almeida said, stepping from the shadows, his face bruised, a makeshift bandage wrapped around his forearm. "We don't have much time." Dawn broke over the Atlantic, painting the waves in shades of gold and crimson. Sophia stood on the beach house porch, cradling a mug of coffee, her mind still processing the revelations of the night. Beside her, Almeida leaned heavily against the railing, his injuries tended but his face grey with exhaustion. "They came to my room around midnight," he explained, voice rough. "Two men, Treasury Department IDs, said they wanted to talk about my interest in the old cases." He gestured to his bandaged arm. "I didn't stick around for the conversation." Sophia had connected her laptop to the television, displaying the contents of both the USB drive and Jeremy Wells's documents. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing billions flowing through the Westland operation, photographs of meetings between cartel representatives and corporate lawyers, internal memos discussing how to handle problematic employees. "We have enough to destroy them all," Sophia said, turning from the ocean view. "Dawson, Manning, everyone involved." Almeida's laugh was hollow. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't just about a handful of corrupt lawyers and a dirty politician. This operation had protection from the highest levels." He gestured at the screen. "Why do you think Treasury agents are involved? This went federal decades ago." "So we go public," Sophia insisted. "I still have contacts in the media. Once this is out there, then what? You think a 27-year-old conspiracy will make headlines when the key players include a sitting senator eyeing the governor's mansion?" Almeida shook his head. "They'll bury it. Or worse, they'll bury us." Sophia paced the weathered boards of the porch. "Then we need leverage, something that forces them to listen." Her journalist's mind raced through possibilities. The families, the other victims' families. "If we bring them together, most have moved on," Almeida countered. "Some are dead, and approaching them puts them at risk. What about Margaret Wells? She already suspects her husband was murdered." A thoughtful expression crossed Almeida's face. "She's respected, connected. Her testimony about Jeremy's right-hand placement could reopen his case." Sophia nodded, momentum building. "And I still have friends at the Boston Chronicle. Melissa in records, people who would listen." "It's thin," Almeida warned. "It's a start," Sophia countered, determination hardening her resolve. "Elena deserves justice. All of them do." They spent the morning organizing the evidence, creating copies, establishing a secure digital trail that couldn't be easily erased. Sophia contacted trusted colleagues, carefully arranging dead drops and secure communications. By noon, they had the framework of a plan. "We need to move," Almeida said, checking his watch. "They'll have tracked my phone to this area by now." As if summoned by his words, the distant sound of vehicles on the gravel road reached them. Sophia rushed to the window, spotting two black SUVs approaching the isolated beach house. "Back door!" Almeida ordered, grabbing their evidence bags. "There's a path through the dunes to the next property." They fled across the windswept beach, the October air sharp in their lungs. Behind them, men in dark suits converged on the beach house. Sophia clutched the original documents to her chest, the digital copies secure in multiple locations. They reached a public beach, a mile south, blending with the few hardy souls braving the autumn shore. Almeida's breathing was labored, his face ashen. The cancer was taking its toll, Sophia realized. His determination to expose the truth, perhaps the only thing keeping him going. "We need to split up," he said as they reached the parking lot. "I'll head to New York, contact an old FBI colleague who might still listen. You get to Margaret Wells, then your media contacts." Sophia hesitated. "They'll be watching both of us now. Which is why we have to separate. Double the chances that one of us succeeds." He handed her a burner phone. 3 days, then call the only number in there. If I'm alive, I'll answer." It was the last time Sophia saw James Almeida alive. The official report would later claim he suffered a heart attack while driving, his car veering off the Merritt Parkway into a ravine. An unfortunate medical emergency, nothing suspicious. Sophia knew better. She went underground, moving between safe houses established through her years as an investigative reporter. Margaret Wells provided a sworn statement about her husband's death, the inconsistency of the right-handed gun placement. 3 other families of victims came forward, revealing harassment and intimidation they'd experienced after questioning the original investigations. Melissa from records disappeared for 2 tense days, then resurfaced with copies of evidence transfer logs showing the irregular removal of materials by Treasury officials. The story broke not with a bang, but a whisper, first in local outlets, then gaining traction through social media and independent news sites. Mainstream media approached cautiously, the allegations too explosive, the targets too powerful for reckless reporting. Senator Richard Dawson issued immediate denials, his press team working overtime to discredit Sophia as a grief-stricken sister chasing conspiracy theories. Charles Manning, now retired in Florida, refused all comment. The Treasury Department cited national security protocols regarding certain investigations from the late 1990s. But the digital trail Sophia and Almeida had created proved impossible to contain. Financial journalists began connecting the dots between the Westland operation and several banking crises. Legal scholars identified patterns in case dismissals during Dawson's tenure as district attorney. 6 weeks after discovering Elena's chess-set hiding place, Sophia sat in the offices of the Boston Chronicle, facing a room of editors and lawyers. On the table between them lay the complete dossier, every document, photograph, and testimony they had gathered. "This isn't just about 8 murdered women," she told them, her voice steady. "It's about a system that valued money over justice, that decided some lives were worth less than others, that buried the truth so deep they thought it would never see daylight." The story ran the next day, spanning 12 pages. Within hours, federal agents were escorting Charles Manning from his Palm Beach home. 3 days later, Richard Dawson announced he was suspending his gubernatorial campaign to focus on fighting these baseless allegations. By week's end, a special prosecutor had been appointed. Sophia stood at Elena's grave, placing fresh flowers against the cold marble. 27 years of grief had carved permanent lines around her eyes, but today they crinkled with something like peace. "We did it, Elena," she whispered. "It wasn't the killer they were protecting. It was themselves." The victims had names again, faces that appeared on front pages rather than in forgotten case files. Their stories were being told, not as cautionary tales about the dangers facing young women, but as testaments to the courage of those who stumbled upon corruption and refused to look away. Sophia had moved back into her apartment, though the investigation wall remained, transformed now into a memorial. 8 women whose lives had intersected with a conspiracy too powerful to confront alone. As she turned to leave the cemetery, she noticed a young woman standing nearby, clutching a newspaper. Their eyes met, and Sophia recognized the look, the desperate hope of someone searching for answers. "My mother," the woman said hesitantly. She was Janet Cooper, the 3rd victim. Sophia nodded, extending her hand. "Would you like to tell me about her?" They walked together through the autumn leaves, trading stories of the women they had loved and lost. Not forgotten victims, not anymore, just ordinary people who had glimpsed an extraordinary truth and paid the ultimate price for their courage. And somewhere, Sophia liked to think, Eleanor was smiling.